Dad, you stopped being family a long time ago. My daughter said it while looking straight into my eyes. No hesitation. No remorse. Just calm. Like she was reading off the weather. In that moment, the whole room went dead silent. The air conditioner humming on the wall. The ice knocking against the side of a wine glass. And the sound of my own heart, as if someone had just crushed it right there in the middle of my chest. The man sitting beside her gave a faint smirk. Damon, my son-in-law, the one who'd spent years turning me into an outsider in my own family. He raised his wine glass to cover half his face, but I still saw that smile. The smile of a man who believed he'd just won. He thought I had lost. He thought I would quietly bow my head, swallow the humiliation, and disappear. He thought he understood me, but he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Because there was one thing Damon didn't know. This house existed because of me. His career existed because of me. The lavish life he was enjoying existed because of sacrifices no one wanted to remember anymore. And the very moment my daughter declared that I was no longer family, I decided to end it all. From the outside, what happened next looked like the perfect revenge. But the truth was far crueler than that. Because this isn't a story about me destroying my family. This is a story about what happened when I stopped saving them. And just 6 months later, everything Damon thought he owned began to crumble right before his eyes. My name is Walter Reyes. I'm 68 years old. I live by myself in a small, tidy house off Eastern Avenue in Sacramento, the kind of street where the jacaranda trees drop purple all over the sidewalk in May, and the quiet is so complete some nights you can hear the refrigerator hum from the porch. I spent 36 years as a soil and structural consultant. I tested ground before people built on it. I told developers the truth about what their land could and couldn't hold. That was my whole career, telling people what would stand and what would sink. People who knew me only a little always thought I was a soft man. Easy to move. They mistook my quiet for weakness. That's a mistake people make about quiet men. We're not soft. We're just patient. And patience that gets pushed far enough turns into something else entirely. It was a Sunday in June. Sacramento heat already pressing down by noon. That dry valley heat that makes the air shimmer over the asphalt on Folsom Boulevard. I drove out to my daughter's house in El Dorado Hills, one of those big new builds with the 3-car garage and a lawn so green it looks fake against the brown hills behind it. The kind of house that announces something to everyone who drives by. I helped with the down payment on that house. Nobody brings that up anymore. I had a gift on the passenger seat. A first edition gardening book for my daughter, Nadia. She used to love growing things when she was small. I wasn't sure she still did. I parked, picked it up, and walked to the door. She opened it before I knocked. Dad. A smile, but a careful one, the managed kind. She'd been giving me that smile for about 2 years. Hey, sweetheart, I said. I hugged her. She smelled like a perfume I didn't recognize. Not the one she used to wear. Behind her, like he'd been placed there for the shot, stood her husband, Damon. Pressed shirt, sleeves folded just so, a watch that cost more than my first car. He had a smile that worked very hard and never reached his eyes. Walter. He put out his hand, squeezed too tight the way he always did, like the handshake was a small reminder of something. Damon, I said, and I shook it. Let me stop here for a second, because I want to be straight with you. If you've ever walked into a room where someone you love is performing a version of happiness for you, where the air is warm but everything in it is staged, then you already know the loneliness I felt standing in that doorway. You smile back, you play along. But somewhere inside, a small voice says, "This isn't real, and you don't yet know how right it is." Dinner was in their formal room, the one they used maybe 4 times a year. Nadia had cooked my favorite, the chicken and rice my mother used to make. I noticed that. I notice everything. That's a soil tester for you. We learned to read what's underneath the surface. We were 20 minutes in when Damon started. He had a way of lowering himself into his own importance, slow, like a man easing into a hot bath, savoring every degree. "I don't know if Nadia told you," he said, cutting his food with surgical neatness, "but we're closing in on a contract with the Sacramento Regional Development Authority." "She mentioned something," I said. "It's big, Walter. The riverfront redevelopment. 40 acres. The kind of deal that puts your name on the map for good." Nadia beamed at him. That beam, the one she used to give me when she'd done something she was proud of. "That is a big contract," I said evenly. "How'd you get in front of the authority?" Something flickered behind his eyes. Quick, like a fish moving under still water. Relationships, he said smoothly. You build enough trust in this business. Doors open. I picked up my fork. I chewed slowly, because I knew exactly which door had opened, and I knew whose name was painted on it. Here's what nobody at that table knew. 3 weeks before, I'd gotten a call from an old colleague, Henry Okafor. Henry and I had worked side by side for over 20 years. He called because he'd seen my name on a project proposal that crossed his desk. My name. Listed as a senior technical reference and consulting advisor for a company called Walter Reyes Holdings. I had never agreed to that. I had never been asked. Not once. Damon had taken my last name, bolted it onto his own, and built a company letterhead out of it. I sat in my kitchen for 15 minutes after that call, doing nothing but breathing. 36 years. 36 years of showing up, telling people the hard truth about their land, never once signing off on something I couldn't stand behind. That reputation wasn't luck. It was decades of being the man who didn't lie. And Damon had folded it up like a paper napkin and stuffed it in his pocket. I didn't call him. I didn't call Nadia. I made a decision the way I make all my real decisions, quietly, and I waited for Father's Day. So at that table, I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folded document. Damon, I said, keeping my voice level, I need to talk to you about something. He looked at the papers. His jaw tightened, just slightly. Nadia glanced between us. What is that? It's a copy of the proposal your husband submitted to the Development Authority. I smoothed it on the table, turned it so he could read. My name is on page 4, listed as a technical advisor. I never agreed to that. I found out because Henry Okafor called to congratulate me on a project I'd never heard of. The silence had weight to it, the kind you can feel on your skin. Walter, Damon started. It's more complicated than. I'm not finished. First time I'd ever said that at one of their tables. I want my name removed. From every document, every filing, every version. By tomorrow. He leaned back, exhaled slow through his nose. That recalibrating thing he did. And then he turned to look at Nadia, and that's when I watched it happen. I watched him choose his weapon. Nadia, he said, his voice going soft and wounded. Your father is trying to blow up the biggest opportunity of our lives. On Father's Day, he let it land. I don't know what I did to make him hate us being successful. Now, I want to pause here, because I think this is important. If you've ever watched someone twist the truth so smoothly that you almost doubt your own memory of what just happened, that's what manipulation actually looks like. It isn't loud. It's gentle. It wears the face of the victim. And it works because the people who love you would rather believe the gentle lie than the hard truth. That's not what's happening, I said. But Nadia was already standing. Damon worked 2 years on this, Dad. 2 years. And you walk in on Father's Day to tear it down? He used my name without asking. That's fraud. It's a reference. It's not a reference if I never gave it. Her eyes went wide. Her mother's eyes when she was angry. You want to do this? Fine. Here's where we are, Dad. You apologize to Damon, right now, and you tell him you support this family. Or you are not welcome in this house. Or in my life. The room went completely still. I looked at my daughter. This woman I'd driven to swim practice in the dark, sat outside emergency rooms for, cried over at her graduation, and I finally let myself see the thing I'd been refusing to see for 2 years. She didn't need me to protect her from this man. She was standing right next to him. Damon's smile was small, controlled. The smile of a man who'd watched someone fold 100 times and was fully expecting fold 101. I stood up slowly. I looked her in the eye, and I gave her 5 words. Quiet, clear, final. Watch how fast this falls. I picked up my jacket. I walked to the door. I didn't look back. They thought my silence was shame. They thought I was driving home to grieve. They had no idea I was driving home to make one phone call. I got home at 7, 2 inches the evening. I know because I looked at the clock over the sink the second I walked in. You do that when something has just ended, and your brain wants to mark the time. The light was coming through the kitchen window at that low gold angle that makes everything look peaceful, whether it is or not. It was not. I sat at my table. Didn't turn on the TV. Didn't call anyone. I just let the last 2 hours settle over me like dust after something collapses. 68 years old. I raised that girl. Drove her to school on frozen mornings. Missed meals. Missed sleep. Swallowed my pride more times than I can count. because the alternative, losing her the way I almost did after the divorce, was something I could not stomach. And she stood across a table and told me I wasn't welcome in her life, with her husband smiling behind her like he'd just turned over a winning hand. I sat there a long time, 40 minutes, maybe more, and somewhere in that stillness, something I'd been holding tight for years just let go. It didn't snap. It didn't explode. It released. Like a man setting down a weight he'd carried so long he'd forgotten it wasn't part of his own body. I was done holding up the sky. And I'll tell you something that still surprises me. I slept better that night than I had in 3 years. Most people would have tossed and turned, replaying every word, drafting texts they'd never send. Not me. I was out by 10, and up at 5:15, same as always. Coffee before the sun. The mockingbirds outside doing their thing like nothing had happened. Because for me, nothing needed to happen yet. If you've ever finally made peace with a decision everyone else would lose sleep over, you know that strange calm. It's not coldness, it's clarity. It's the quiet that comes after you stop arguing with yourself. Monday morning. I dressed the way I used to dress for work. Pressed shirt, good shoes. Not because I was going anywhere, but because some phone calls deserved to be made standing up straight. I had one call to make. One. His name was Arthur Coyle, 73 years old, the chairman of the Regional Development Authority, and a man I'd known since 1989, when we both sat on a county zoning panel. Arthur was the kind of man who'd spent 50 years in California development, and never once had his integrity questioned, which meant he valued integrity the way some men value money, personally. Without apology, I dialed at 8:45. He picked up on the second ring. "Walter, don't tell me you're coming out of retirement." "Not quite," I said. "Arthur, I need 10 minutes. And I need you to hear me clearly, because what I'm about to tell you is something I should have said the day I found out." A pause. When he spoke again, the warmth was still there, but under it was something sharper. "Attention. Go ahead." I told him everything. Calmly. In order. No drama. That my name appeared on the Walter Reyes proposal as a technical advisor. That I'd never been asked. That I had no professional association with Damon Vance. No knowledge of his practices. And that my name had been used without my consent to reach a public development contract. And then I said the part that mattered most. "Arthur, I've known you 30 years. My name means something, or it means nothing, and I will not let it be borrowed by a man I can't vouch for, to open a door I never agreed to open." Silence on the line, not the uncomfortable kind, the processing kind. "Walter," he finally said, very quiet, very measured, the voice of a man understanding the full size of something. "Are you prepared to put that in writing? I'll have a signed statement to your office by noon. I'm sorry this happened to you. I'm not angry, Arthur. I just need my name back." I hung up. I stood in my kitchen a moment. That was it. 10 minutes. 36 years of reputation. And it took 10 minutes to tell the truth. Now here's the part I want you to hear, because it's the part most people get wrong. I want to be honest with you, if that were me at a younger age, I'd have wanted to burn the whole thing down. I'd have called his competitors. Made it loud. But I didn't do any of that. I made one call. I told the truth to one man with the authority to act on it. And then I let go. The dominoes that fell after that, I didn't push. They fell on their own. I typed the statement myself. Drove it to the authority's office on Capitol Mall before 11. The young woman at the desk recognized my name from the document. "Mr. Reyes," she said, with a look I couldn't quite read. "We'll make sure this goes straight to Mr. Coyle." "Thank you," I said, and I walked out. I'd like to tell you I spent that afternoon feeling triumphant, that I poured myself something strong and watched the sunset like a man who'd won, but that's not what happened. I went home and I grieved. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about finally pulling your hands off the weight you've held up for years. The weight doesn't just vanish. It falls. And things underneath it get crushed. One of those things was the picture I'd carried for 22 years of Nadia and me being okay. Of us surviving the divorce, the teenage years, all of it, and coming out the other side with something real between us. I sat at the table and thought about the 6-year-old who used to fall asleep in the back seat on the way home from my place. How I'd carry her in so she wouldn't wake. She was so small. Then I gave myself that one evening to feel all of it. No shortcuts. And the next morning I got up and moved on. By Tuesday afternoon I heard through Henry that the authority had suspended the riverfront contract review, pending a full audit of the proposal. Legal had been brought in. The ethics protocol had triggered automatically the moment a forged reference was flagged on a public submission. They didn't just kill the deal, they flagged the file, which meant Damon Vance's name was now attached to a documented case of fraudulent misrepresentation on a public contract in Sacramento County. And in commercial development, in a market where everyone knows everyone and reputation is the actual currency, that flag did not stay quiet. It moved fast, the way bad news always does. By Tuesday evening, 2 other firms Damon had been courting had gone silent. No returned calls. The professional version of a door closed very politely in your face. Henry called me that night. "Walter, I don't know what you said to Arthur. I just told the truth." He let out a long breath. Well, the truth had somewhere to be. Wednesday morning my phone started ringing. First call, 7:51, Damon. I let it ring. He called again at 8:15, then 8:40, then a text. "Walter, we need to talk. This has gotten out of hand. I think there's been a misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. Interesting word for a man who typed my name into a legal document without my knowledge. At 9:30, Nadia called. I stared at her name on the screen for a long moment. My daughter, my little girl, the one who told me 3 days ago that I wasn't welcome in her life. And I let it ring. Now, I know how that sounds. A father, letting his daughter's call go to voicemail. And I want to be honest with you, it was the hardest thing I did in this entire story. Harder than the dinner. Harder than the phone call. Because every cell in my body wanted to pick up and fix it. But I'd spent 22 years fixing things for her before she had to feel them. And I knew, the way you know a truth in your bones, that if I rushed in now, she'd never actually arrive at the thing she needed to see. Some truths only stick if a person finds them alone. What I learned later, from Nadia herself, was what happened inside that house. Damon had come home Tuesday already cracking. The silence from his contacts had unnerved him in a way she'd never seen. By Wednesday, he had the formal written notice. The deal was dead. The flag was real. And that's when he stopped performing. The charm went first. Then the composure. Then whatever careful structure he'd built around himself came apart, and what was underneath wasn't the polished man she'd married. He turned on her the way cornered people turn on whoever is closest. Blamed her. Blamed me. And he said the thing that told her everything. He told her the only reason he'd ever needed her was her father's name. That without my reputation attached to his pitch, the authority would never have taken the meeting. He said it like it was her fault for not delivering me properly. A door. That's all she'd been to him. A door with my name on it. And the moment the door stopped being useful, he didn't even bother to hide it. There's a specific kind of knock you feel before you hear it. Not loud, not angry. Desperate. I was in the backyard when it came, Wednesday afternoon, just past 3, pulling weeds along the back fence. That slow, mindless work that keeps your hands busy while your mind does what it needs to do. I heard it 3 times. Careful, almost apologetic. And I knew who it was before I reached the door. I looked through the side window. Nadia. Standing on my porch in a wrinkled blouse, the pale yellow one she'd had for years, the one she wore when she wasn't trying to impress anybody. Hair undone. No makeup. Red around the eyes in a way that told me she hadn't just cried recently, she'd been crying for hours. 29 years old. And she looked 7 again. Standing outside my apartment that first weekend after the divorce, backpack on, stuffed rabbit under her arm, trying so hard to be brave. I opened the door. Her chin trembled once. Then she locked it down. "Dad, can I come in?" I stepped aside. She sat at my kitchen table. The same table where I'd made the decision. I put the kettle on without asking. Nadia always drank tea when something was wrong. Had since she was 12. She didn't speak right away. Just stared at her own folded hands like they belonged to someone else. I set the mug down, sat across from her, and waited. "He's not who I thought," she finally said. "He screamed at me, Dad." Her eyes came up, raw, not raised his voice. Screamed. Like I was nothing. Like I was the reason it all fell apart. She laughed, with no humor in it. Like I was supposed to apologize because his fraud got caught. I kept my face steady. Let her land. He said the only reason he ever needed me was your name. Your connections. That without your reputation the board never takes the meeting. She looked at me. He said it like it was my fault for not handing you over properly. The kitchen was very quiet. handed over, like I was a package. Like 36 years of telling the truth about the ground was a tool someone could borrow without asking, and return slightly damaged. Nadia, I said, you tried to tell me. At dinner, you weren't attacking him, you were... I was just telling the truth. Her voice cracked. She pressed her fingers to her mouth. And I gave you an ultimatum, Dad. On Father's Day, I stood in my own dining room and told you you weren't welcome in my life. And you just stood up, said 5 words, and left. She exhaled, shaking. I've been doing that to you my whole life, haven't I? Every time things got uncomfortable, I made you choose between the truth and losing me. And you always chose me. She looked up. I called that love, but it was never fair. There it was. The thing I'd waited years to hear, not because I needed it. I'd stopped needing that somewhere around 60, but because she needed to say it, for herself. No, I said carefully. It wasn't fair. She blinked. I think she expected something softer. I love you. I've loved you every single day of your life. That has never once been in question. I leaned forward. But I made a mistake for a long time, Nadia. Every time you threatened to walk away, I folded. I thought I was protecting you. What I was really doing was teaching you that my boundaries didn't matter, that if you pushed hard enough, I'd move. I paused. Damon learned that lesson too, probably from watching us. That landed. She didn't flinch from it, which told me she'd already been sitting with some version of it before she ever knocked. So what do I do? She asked, and her voice was small, not weak. The smallness of someone sitting in the rubble of their own life, asking a real question. That's not mine to answer, I said. That one's yours. My phone buzzed on the counter. We both looked. Damon. Her jaw tightened. He's been calling you all day. I know. Are you going to answer? I watched the screen until it went dark. No. She almost smiled. Almost. I want to talk to you about mercy for a second, because I've thought about it a lot since. When you're young, you think mercy is softness. You think forgiveness means reopening every door you ever closed. You think love means absorbing whatever someone throws and still coming back smiling. I don't believe that anymore. Mercy, at 68, is letting someone face the natural consequence of what they did and still leaving the porch light on. That's the version that's actually love. The other version is just fear wearing love's coat. Nadia came back 2 days later. We talked longer, harder in places. She'd already spoken to an attorney. She was asking the right questions, making the hard calls herself, and doing it without asking me to carry it. That's the thing that told me she was going to be all right. And this is what this whole story taught me, the thing I'd give anything to have understood at 40 instead of 68. The mistake most of us make is believing that if we just absorb enough, give enough, fold enough, the people we love will finally feel safe enough to be good to us. It doesn't work that way. What Nadia finally understood, that nobody else in that dining room did, is that boundaries aren't the opposite of love. They're the proof of it. The man who folds every time isn't loving harder. He's just teaching everyone around him that his no is for sale. So here's something you can actually do today, if any of this hit close to home. Think of one boundary you've let someone walk across, again and again, because you were afraid of what saying no might cost. Just name it to yourself. You don't have to act yet. Naming it is where it starts. And then sit with this one question. If the people in your life only respect the version of you that never says no, is it really you they love, or just what you do for them? I want to hear from you, because I read these. If you think I was right to make that phone call and let it all fall, comment the number 1. If you think I should have warned my daughter first, protected her from the crash, comment 2. And if you think I was wrong to let it go this far at all, comment 3. There's no wrong answer. I just want to know where you stand. And tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is there. It always amazes me how far these stories travel. And if you've ever sat across from someone you love, and realized they were standing on the other side, tell me. You're not alone in it. I promise you that. Damon called one last time on Thursday morning, 7 a.m., before I'd finished my first cup of coffee. I looked at the screen, sent it to voicemail, made my eggs, and watched the mockingbirds in the yard. Some men beg loudly, I thought, because they spent their whole lives mistaking quiet for weakness. They never understand, right up to the very end, that the quiet ones always knew exactly what they were holding. If this story meant something to you, do me a small favor and subscribe. I'm just a man telling true feeling stories from a kitchen table in Sacramento, and every single subscriber helps these reach someone who needs to hear them tonight. I'd be grateful to have you here for the next one. I'll see you then. This is a fictional story inspired by real emotional experiences, fully rewritten and reimagined in Sacramento to create original content. Any resemblance to real people or events is coincidental.